the ultimate BF setup GPU for the ultimate BF price. Okay. If you couldn't tell right now, GPU prices are just insanely high. There's no better example of this other than the one and only RTX 3090. This is the rarest, most expensive, and most overpriced GPU in the world right now. It is literally the reason why all these other GPUs rose in price, the 3000 series. This is the prime example of scalping. This is why we all hate scalpers. Already $1,500, the RTX 3090 is expensive. $2,800. You're paying the price of a fairly average car for only one part of a PC system. That is absolutely insane. We're going to be attempting to build a reasonably priced RTX 3090 build, $3,000 to $3,500 range, with GPU prices being this insanely high. Already that's probably the toughest build to swallow. We're building a $3,000 RTX 3090 build, and we're already at $2,800. Now, other thing I want to make sure we have is the best CPU in the world right now, so we don't bottleneck that 3090, which is actually very easy to do. I think it's a freaking 3090. We're gonna need an i9 10900K. You know, just usual day in the life, an i9 10900 900K. Oddly enough, these actually aren't that overpriced. Like, for the best CPU, $411 for a CPU capable of 10 cores and 20 threads, honestly, isn't bad. Like, considering that we just added a $3,000 GPU, $400 for the CPU actually seems kind of cheap. Yeah, best GPU in the world, best CPU in the world. Now we have to do the motherboard. No frills, basic motherboard, because motherboard doesn't add any functionality other than maybe adding more RAM, I guess, but yeah, basic no frills. Yeah, and boom, we got an $80 Intel Tension motherboard. You just need a basic motherboard to house the 10900K. It's kind of funny because I'm talking about basic when I literally just got the two most overkill products in the world, so it's kind of a nice pairing. But I guess motherboard doesn't really add any functionality, so at least any performance functionality. Obviously, nicer motherboards are easier to take apart. It's easier to add more RAM and stuff, so in that sense, more functionality. But in terms of whether the parts will work at their best, it doesn't add any functionality. And we're not bottlenecking that 3090 because we literally got the best CPU in the world also. So we're on at 3200. This is supposed to be a $3,000 build. The rest of the parts were going to be a wash. We're going to go 16 gigs of RAM for this just because 32 still isn't necessary. So 3600 megahertz. Main reason I'm making this video is because in all the PC builds I see, everyone's like $3,000 RTX 3090 build, and I'm like, okay, that's not that bad. But then you also have to take into account that the actual 3090 doesn't cost $1,500. The 3090 costs like what, $3,000, as much as the entire build itself. So it's not really an apples to apples comparison. We're still going to be trying to match those $3,000 builds with building a non-bottleneck viable 3090 build. Not viable in the sense that you should build this, but viable in the sense that 3090 is going to be used at its maximum potential. So yeah, so we're just going to throw the same RAM we've done in all the other builds. since I believe the $900 build. And yeah, same RAM. And oh my god, this SSD has been through so much. We use this exact same SSD in our $200 build, and just because we literally don't have any more money to spare, we're going to use it in this build. Yeah. SSD does not give more performance. We're only going for performance. This is honestly kind of a joke at this point, but then we need the BF power supply, the 800 watt Thermaltake power supply to power this beast. An absolute beast of a power supply. We're looking at $85 for it. 800 watts. 3090 has no chill, just like this power supply has no chill. And just like the price of this build has no chill. I will say, I do not recommend building this build. Once again, please do not build this build, oh my god. But we got the best CPU, we got the best GPU, and we're still relatively in the radius of most 3090 builds, even though we paid insanely high for the 3090. Do I recommend this build? No. But I just think it is somewhat impressive that we were able to build a non-bottleneck 3090 experience for the same price as if the 3090 was, you just walked into Best Buy and could get it off the shelf, That's most of the builds on the internet, those $3,000 bills. They're just assuming the 3090 is $1,500 when that's not the reality. Clearly, that's not the reality. But, yeah, even despite that not being the reality, we still made a relatively decently priced build. And just like in my 3080 build, if GPU prices were not this insane, we literally paid $1,300 markup on this GPU, we would have been able to manage this build for $2,100. $2,100 for an ITX 3090 build. That actually sounds pretty good for a non-bottleneck experience. Obviously, one thing I would change definitely is add more storage. That is a definite must. And probably add some RGB in there. Probably add more RAM. The 16 gigs is still enough. Probably get some Corsair, nice, more cooling fans, a nice case, all of that I wish we could get. And if the ITX 3090 was where it should be, to 1500, then yeah, we'd still be able to do that for this much. In fact, maybe a couple $100 cheaper than this, but be able to get all the best points. But with this build, we could really only afford the best CPU and GPU, and everything else was a wash. Though CPU and GPU are the only two important things. Everything else can be a wash as long as you have a good CPU and GPU. I obviously need a good power supply to power both of them, but nothing else adds performance. I mean, you do need a decent amount of RAM nowadays and fast speed RAM, but honestly, the difference between low-end RAM and high-end RAM isn't that vast of a difference in price. So yeah, that wasn't that big of a deal. Yeah, main way we save money is mainly just the SSD. I want to put a 2 terabyte NVMe SSD, but it's just really not practical with the budget we have. I wanted to throw some RGB in there. I wanted to throw more RAM, but we just can't do that. But with what we had available, I think this was relatively decent.